Let's get it going. This is the Jeremiah Gunn Show. Trigger warning, you are on the Gun Show. You don't need a permit. We're going to talk about permits for everything. Here we go. And now this. The long sobs of violins of autumn wound my heart with a languor monotonous. The long sobs of violins of autumn wound my heart with a monotonous languor. This is Resistance Radio. I'm talking to you men. Men that are men. We'll talk about women that are men, but right now I need to talk to you men. I'm writing to you young men because you are strong. Remember our bonus noches program when you can tell me the source of that quote. We'll get you a little nice prize. Okay, this program's dedicated to Charlie Kirk, the prophet Charlie Kirk, a national treasure, cut down in the prime of his life. You know, there's some really, really interesting parallels, but basically just going to say, let's talk about prophets, not people. Let's talk about prophets, not people. Prophets. Because, you know, kind of who's more important? Someone who can tell you what's going to happen. I'm not talking about tarot cards or, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody who knows what's going on, tells you what the problem is. You know, at work, they called me in my career, they called me a truth teller. So that was an important issue. That was an important thing to have in your company, a truth teller. It's kind of interesting. And then we had fact checkers. But somebody who can tell you what's going to happen and why and warn you. Basically, it's warning. It's warnings. This is Jeremiah Gunn with your warnings. The professor. I'm an expert. An undocumented expert, which is the best kind, because I didn't regurgitate, cooperate to graduate. I learned about life. I studied life like an autodidact, like all the guys on Mount Rushmore, like Charlie Kirk. So, what I can tell you where everybody out there is right, and where they're wrong. Any topic that you can come up with, anything. I guarantee. It's not about me. This is about the truth. Okay? Now, so here's, by the way, no justice, no peace, but I'm coming to you to speak the truth in peace and love. No justice, no peace, and truth. No truth, no love, no peace, no justice, no nothing. So you can't just crumple up that word truth and throw it away. And you can't just flip it off like that famous meeting when someone asked the greatest teacher in the history of mankind, womankind, the world, history of woman, asked him, what is truth? Yeah, you know that guy had some system, some concept of truth. He's just doing that. Who knows why? So here's an important safety tip. By the way, I'm not a SEAL, a Navy SEAL, but some of them weren't either. We'll talk about that one of these days. I think you'll be surprised. I'm not a PhD, Ivy League. I'm not a UFC fight promoter or a psychobabbler. Or a comedian who became a podcaster. Some of those guys are great, and some of them are honorable men. I've listened to all of them, and I like to be like, call me Cliff Notes. I'm going to tell you where they're right, where they're wrong, and almost all of them miss the boat by just a tick, okay, just a bit. So here's an important safety tip. I think that I don't know. I think I speak slowly. I'm not an auctioneer. I'm not Charlie, what's his name? Ben Shapiro. Okay. This isn't going to be, uh, you know, who was like him was Alan Keyes. I don't know if you know him, but man, it had a machine gun mouth hooked up to a supercomputer brain. I'm not as dumb as I look. It's not possible, but I'm not that. Okay. So my pronouns are, by the way, my pronouns are e pluribus unum, liberty, and in God we trust, truth, justice, and the exceptional American way. So, and oh, by the way, I'm wearing a shirt of color. I am a male man, a man male. And my hair color is whatever comes in the box that I get at the store. So I'm 5'17" in height as well. So let's talk about we've got yeah. So some people tell me my voice is mellifluous. Some people tell me it's monotonous. I don't want to put you to sleep. Unless that's what you want, go ahead and use it instead of white noise. But I'd only ask, please, that thank you for listening. And if you wake up in the morning and drive to work, hopefully, you will listen and play it back. But play it at 1.25, 1.5, whatever you want. I love to listen to books that way. I put it up at 1.8 if that helps, because it's almost like speed reading. I don't want to, take your time unnecessarily. So go ahead and speed it up if that helps. Otherwise, if you're okay with it, just leave it as is. So let's talk about what are we going to talk about? What's the most important thing to you? That's what I want to know. What do you want to ask? What do you want to talk about? I want to look at polls. Polls are so insane and dubious that there's so few that are any good that it's really propaganda. It starts with a P, but it's not a poll. It's propaganda. Somebody went door to door in the days before the internet polling, and we were never intended to get. By the way, we're never intended to have our presidents be American Idols, where people can, vote by mail or whatever. Never should have happened. And this. Our whole system has been, for the sake of the sheeple, instead of we the people, for the sake of the flock, it's been flocked up so badly that we almost don't even know where to begin. So, not good. Okay? So, what are we going to talk about? What do you want to talk about? That's what I'd like to know. I don't want to see your comments. I want you to send your questions, call with your questions as soon as we get that nailed up. But I will respond. I'm not just going to go shout out to Hoop-de-Doo 87 here because they said this or that. I hope, no, I don't want to knock anybody, but I hope you want more than that. I do. We need to talk. We have to talk. This is existential. We had that word thrown around a lot. One of the guys, highest office in the free world, couldn't even pronounce it. His running mate didn't know what it meant. But existential means your existence. That means that this matter has to do with your very existence. And so what we could talk about so many different things, but I really like to talk about what's the most important. Just because it was in the news today, what happened the last couple of days, the U.S. won the hockey gold, men and women. That's probably a first. And probably beat the same nemesis, Canada. But that's the first time since 1980. Really interesting. But what else happened? Tariffs. Supreme Court gave a ruling on tariffs. A lot of stuff's happening with our eye problem, our international eye problem, which is Israel, Iran, Islam, ICE, the industrial military complex, some of you will say. and I'd say our irreconcilable differences. That's a term that came out of the divorce industry. They used to have a couple of reasons why you could get divorced, and then it's just boom, irreconcilable differences, whatever a reasonable woman thinks that those are. And so let's start with the Civil War. Okay, I don't know if you know this, but the Civil War never ended. The Civil War never ended. Started by the same people, kept going by the same people. So just a brief background. The Democrat Party didn't really have that name until I guess Andrew Jackson came along. That's why there's an ass for the symbol for the party. You ever wonder about that? They proudly have an ass, a jackass, for their symbol. It was because of Andrew Jackson, and people called him Jackass. He was stubborn, strong back, and a weak mind. Dig in, all that kind of stuff. And so I guess that's what, now they've got the weak mind but not the strong back. So I'm not sure how that kind of pertains. 20 acres and a mule was something that people will gritch about. We'll talk about that. We'll explain all of that later, another time. But I don't know, they have a lot of problems with that, but they didn't get it or whatever, but that's okay if it's this kind of the symbol for their party. So the Democrat Party, when we were trying to form the country, the Constitution, not the Constitution, the agreement to come up with the Continental Congress to come up with the Declaration of Independence and to break away, form our own country, about half of the delegates got up and walked out because they brought up the issue of slavery. Okay, sorry, I don't like it when people say "okay" at the end of everything. Man, I'm sorry. That if you don't like it, I apologize. So I want apologetics, no apologies. No apologies, just apologetics. You know what that word means? Great. If you don't, we'll go over it. So they got up and walked out. They were led by South Carolina. And then, they said, look, this is about becoming a country, not, cooler heads prevailed, I guess. But they wound up leaving slavery in, and they left it in. Okay, so then comes along another bunch of years. We'll go into the whole history of this, John Brown and Stephen Douglas and Frederick Douglass and all that stuff. But basically, just in a nutshell, the Democrats wound up getting this thing where they counted slaves kind of property. Human beings were kind of property, but they were also 3/5 of a person. Why? So they could get representation in Congress. If it weren't for that one thing that Democrat justices on the Supreme Court, so-called, came up with, and the Dred Scott decision, well, if it were for that one thing, they wouldn't have had the representation in Congress to be able to keep it going. They don't even mention it as slavery. They called it our peculiar institution. It's unique to us. Oh, it's all peculiar institution. Because they didn't want to talk about it. So, but they didn't want it threatened either. At the one of the last State of the Union addresses, a congressman from Texas, I think. He looks like a Cro-Magnon from the Museum of Man. Check him out. Look at it. He raised his cane, and he shook it at Trump, and he yelled at him and walked out. I guess he was escorted out. Those guys have no teeth in the Congress or Senate. No teeth at all. I'm going to censure you. And then all the other rodents get around that person that's being censored and they sing or some, it's a new thing, it's a throwback to the 60s where people sang about civil rights or things. And they're still fantasizing. Some of them were formative years were there, and now they're fossils and they think it's, Bob Dylan standing next to him. But anyway, he shook his cane at Trump. And, my mind went right back to, there was a guy named, I think, Preston Brooks, a senator from Mississippi, pretty near Texas. And he actually beat a guy named Charles Sumner from Massachusetts. He beat him with his cane on the floor, almost killed him. The guy was like, he wasn't bedridden, but he was pretty messed up for the rest of his life. But he was a great abolitionist. That's that A word, abolitionist. And so the Democrats started the Civil War, and you say, oh, no, it was the North and the South. It was the North and the South. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a war over a compass or a map. It was a war over philosophy. It was a war over values. We're going to talk about history, not hysteria, not revisionism, not CRT, not Orwellian nonsense that comes up. We're just going to spit facts and tell the truth. You can go find this stuff on, PragerU and that sheriff whose name escapes me right now. He's a great guy, big, strong dude. They'll tell you about that. There's this beautiful congresswoman from, or former congresswoman from Georgia. She does a little PragerU video. If you haven't seen those 5-minute PragerU videos, they're great. They're great. But so they said, okay, well, we're out. They got out and walked out again. This time they walked out of a country, and they called themselves the Confederate States of America because they liked the Articles of Confederation, because it gave a lot more power to states' rights than to the federal government. And that's why we had to fix it, because it wasn't going to work. It wasn't working. We had to have a federal government that was powerful enough, but not too powerful. So we're going to cover all of this stuff, but basically they walked out and they formed, and you say, well, it was just the South. No, it was not the South. It was not the South. Lincoln came on the map as a Republican. The Republican Party was founded to be against slavery. Okay. And then people say, well, Lincoln, hold on.
Lincoln only cared about the country, not the Union. He didn't care about slavery. That's a fact. He didn't care about slavery.
No, he cared about the Constitution. So when he was going to debate the little giant killer, Stephen Douglas, Democrat from the North, he, different as makers from the North, these are the ones who stayed around. Okay, those were Democrats. He was arguing for slavery. In the middle of the Civil War, he was arguing for, he backed Lincoln because they both came from the same sort of debating society and so on. But most Democrats, watch the movie Lincoln. Spielberg doesn't do a great job, but it's a pretty good job. It's based on a book called Team of Rivals, I think, by Doris Kearns Goodwin or whatever her name is. Lincoln was kind of like Trump. He was a lot like Trump. I hope that Trump is as much like Lincoln as he needs to be, because here's the deal. Look, fat. Here's the deal. Look, the deal is, here's the deal. I don't know. Anyway, did the Civil War ever end? No. What happened? A Democrat, popular actor, shot Lincoln. And who took over? A Democrat named Andrew Johnson, his first one impeached. And all of the stuff that we accomplished in the Civil War, all the stuff the Republicans accomplished against the wishes of the rhinos, that's in that movie too, against the wishes of the rhinos. It was narrow, very narrow. Lincoln stuck his neck out. And he got killed as a thanks for it by a Democrat, a popular actor like Johnny Depp, who said he wanted to kill Trump. So a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels. But the main point is it's just a continuation, because General Grant got rid of the KKK, which was founded by a Democrat. And a lot of the Democrats since then, Joe Biden talked about how he hung out with them. And they called him boy. And, all this cutesy pie crap. Kamala Harris said in the debates, "Oh, you were friends with all these Klansmen and everything," and then she goes on Colbert and says, "It was just a debate. It was a debate. It was a debate. It was a debate." Okay, okay, all right. So is he a racist or not? And busing or not? You were that little girl, but okay. All of a sudden, it just doesn't matter. Let me tell you, he's the biggest racist ever. Anyway. From Del Unaware. One of the border states. So anyway, Andrew Johnson came in, undid everything, and basically Jim Crow, which is Democrat, Jim Crow was carried on all through up until like 1963. And 64, 65, civil rights, which Republicans passed, not Democrats. There was a guy you might not remember, Al Gore. Way you can remember that is I'd rather be gored by a boar than bored by a gore. But his father from Tennessee, I ain't no senator's son. Yes, you are. He led the filibuster. We'll talk about filibuster someday. It means pirate, as in Somalis. So. He led the filibuster to defeat the Civil Rights Act. Thank God Republicans were able to pass it. I think the guy's name was Dirksen. Anyway, look it up, but don't use AI. Here, you're going to find intelligence here. Nothing artificial about it. I tell you, AI is the stupidest thing like ever. It's just might as well come from North Korea. It really is really bad. It's really bad. I'd like Elon to talk about that sometime, what he's trying to do about it. God bless him. Anyway, until next time, send me your comments, questions. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Go in peace and love and truth. Most of all, truth, or you don't get the rest.